Former fashion mogul Peter Nygard has been found guilty on 4 counts of sexual assault.
The jury delivered its verdict until late Sunday morning after deliberating for 5 days following a 6-week trial. Nygard was acquitted on 1 count of sexual assault and also not guilty of 1 count of forcible confinement.
The 82-year-old has pleaded not guilty to all charges, which stem from allegations dating back from the 1980s to the mid-2000s. Nygard is now awaiting sentencing.
And for more on this, we are joined live now by Shannon Maroney. She's a therapist and media spokesperson for the victims in this case. Thank you for joining us to talk about this.
Thank you for having me.
So after the verdict came down, you were visibly emotional and you were heard speaking to some of the victims. What did you tell them?
You did it. That's what I said. You did it. You did it. You stood up. And I love you. And he's guilty. Yeah.
You know, going back through the process, these survivors, you know, there's been a lot of talk about this. The survivors are re-victimized when they have to relive the testimony not once but twice because of, you know, the defense and the prosecution. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, in this case, we certainly saw Mr. Greenspan outright call women liars, call them gold diggers. It is just, I'm shocked, not shocked, if I can say that these misogynistic tropes just still play out even today. And it's the attempts, though, to humiliate someone on the stand. I think that these survivors did a very, very good job in not accepting any of those types of arguments or allegations against them. But it's extremely difficult to do, extremely difficult to do. I'm so fortunate and grateful that I was able to provide many of them therapy from the beginning to even get them to the point of being able to make a police statement if they wished, and then to actually go on the stand and say what happened to them, and then be scrutinized on it.
Yeah, and to listen to that and know that everybody else could hear that too.
Yeah.
At the center of these complaints is a fashion mogul. We're talking about a powerhouse, a disgraced powerhouse, Peter Nygard. How difficult was it for these women to come forward with their stories, knowing that they would have to take on a force like that?
Yes, well, I mean, incredibly difficult, and really one of the reasons why it happened now. There were many attempts made over the years. One of the Toronto complainants, and some, as well as someone else who didn't end up taking the stand in this, but it's publicly known, did report this to police in the 1990s. There were reports in as early as 1980 in Winnipeg, and so even when some people were able to come forward to police, they were intimidated, they were scared, they couldn't be promised any protection, and ultimately, and many were advised even by friends or family members, what are you going to do? Look at him. He was on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, Oprah. He's celebrated and upheld and protected by that wealth and by his fame and his power and his privilege. What are you going to do? You're a university student. You're just try to live with what happened. And that's what they tried to do. But life after a sexual assault, a violent sexual assault, I know the jury heard some very graphic and disturbing depravities that were committed against these women. Life is it's never the same. And left alone to cope with what happened to you creates, all kinds of, not just feelings, not just emotions, but beliefs about yourself that get really entrenched. I'm not good enough, I'm helpless, I'm powerless. And then we see when people have to go through life with those fundamental beliefs that were thrust upon them in a sexual assault, life is very different than it might have been for the girl or the woman who would have otherwise grown up to know, I'm a good and loving person, I'm intelligent, I'm capable.
And no one's going to believe me. How real is that fear?
Oh my goodness, that is the most real of all. I think no one will believe me. Or even if they believe me, in court, it's going to be my word against his. because the very nature of sexual assault, and we heard Crown Attorney Neville Goldwalla say that, it's fundamentally, most of the time, there are only two people in the room. Not even in the Nygard case, and we heard he was convicted of one of the offenses where there were others in the room that participated or alleged to have participated in this act.
Well, along with that, he's 82 years old. We're waiting for sentencing. We finished the criminal proceedings. Are these survivors equipped or even prepared to do this again for a possible civil proceeding?
Oh, for a civil proceeding, I think, again, it comes down to each person's individual choice. I think that my opinion is that they deserve to be in any way compensated for the grave damages that they have had to face. And the way to do that is through seeking civil remedy. Mm-hmm. I think it's important. No one has ever said to me, I want the money. In fact, many have said, I don't even care. What I care about is accountability. And since, the civil class action lawsuit opened first in the U.S., many just called those lawyers to say, even I just want to let you know that it was Me Too, the literal Me Too, just to support your case, thinking even that it was an American case and they couldn't be in it because they were Canadian. And then they may have been asked, or they may have decided to join that. But then the criminal, we were able to, it was no small task. It was no easy feat, honestly, to be able to get the police even, I think, interested at first. And those were the first calls that I made, that, in my role, not just as a therapist, but as a social worker therapist. My job is to advocate for the rights and needs of my clients. So if they tell me, and when I say, what do you want to achieve? And they want, for themselves, they might want to achieve trust, a loving relationship. They might want to be alleviated of the symptoms of flashbacks, PTSD, all of those things. And they might also say, I want him to go to jail. I just want him to go to jail. I don't want him to hurt anybody else. For that, I have to say, then we have to get a criminal conviction, and you got to go to the police. Can I help make that path easier for you by making some phone calls at least?
Okay, Shannon Maroney, a therapist and media spokesperson for the victims in the Peter Nygard case. It's been so good to get your perspective. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much for having me.